Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic. This is episode number 618. Releasing in July 19 on digital and video on demand is Thelma, the highly acclaimed action comedy that stars June Squibb as a 94-year-old grandmother who, after being duped by a phone scammer, sets out on a quest to reclaim her stolen money. Also starring Richard Roundtree, Parker Posey, and Malcolm McDowell, Thelma wonderfully plays with action movie tropes in its endearing story of an elderly woman's high-stakes, low-speed pursuit for justice. And joining me now is the writer and director of Thelma, Mr. Josh Margolin. Josh, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am very well today. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you today because as soon as I heard of Thelma and I watched the trailer and then watched the movie, I was just in love with this movie. I love everything about it. What I really dig about this film, and the first thing I want to get into, is that you are honoring your grandmother, the real life Thelma here with this movie. This is kind of based on a true story. Almost got scammed on the phone, and from that you put together your love for your grandmother with your love for your action movies, and you have this film here. Um, where did the idea come about to merge these two great loves of yours together in the one package? I'm just kind of just interested in that.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair question. It's funny. I think in the wake of the scam call in real life, and when I started imagining, what it might have been like if she had set it on her own to get it back, the beginnings of the idea already had a little bit of action DNA in them, just the idea of somebody having to go after what was taken from them. And so as I started thinking about that, it didn't take long before I started getting excited about the idea of sort of treating it treating it with some of that action DNA and looking at it through the lens of an action movie, and then taking those tropes and those ideas and just shrinking them down to a really everyday scope and scale so that they kind of felt very, very human and very day in the life, and I could use them to explore aging and anxiety and your fight for autonomy and all of those themes and ideas that were kind of baked into the script and on my mind when thinking about my own grandma and her moment in life. But as you said, those are two things I've two great loves of mine, my grandmother and action movies, and somehow this incident and this and the idea that was born of it just made those two things click for me and made me go, oh my God, I think if there's a way to combine these, it could be really, really interesting and hopefully funny and tense and fun and all of that. So that was sort of, it started bubbling from there. And then I just sort of followed that thread.
Of course, playing your grandmother, or the avatar of your grandmother, I guess you could say, in the movie is
Yeah.
June Squibb, the great June Squibb. Does when you cast someone to play a role that has such meaning for you in your real life, does that add a different kind of, I don't know if the word pressure would be one there, but extra little something to make sure that you get the essence of of the character right? Because not of course, June Squibb is playing a character a version of this story, but also, I'm sure for yourself you want to try to get the spirit of your grandmother kind of like in the character as well. Is there any kind of, I don't know, extra care taken to that, even more so than say the a regular casting process would be?
It's a good question. In a way, I think it just makes things clearer more quickly, because when you're obviously the character is not exactly my grandma, but it is very much drawn of real traits and real moments and a really strong element of her personality. So what was interesting for me with the casting process and with June is that, so I had always had June in mind. June was sort of, as I started writing it, the person who I couldn't really get out of my head for it because she just
Mm.
felt so right. And so in a way, because I had such a strong sense of who the character was, because it was drawn from someone in my real life, and because I had zeroed in on June so early as sort of the answer to that question, I think what it did most for me is just give me clarity early on. We'd be, if June hadn't said yes, it'd be a different conversation, and it might have been a much more challenging road, at least for me, to figure out who who that person was. But I had her in mind early for those reasons. That she felt so right to me. She felt like she had that spirit and she had the essence of my grandma, that kind of resilience and that toughness and that, but also that vulnerability and that humor and just that cocktail of things that's hard to fake and hard to find, I think. So I think there was an added layer probably of needing to get it right in my mind, but what that actually led me to was just clarity in that casting process really early in kind of zeroing in on June and just going, it's got to be June. She has those qualities. She is that person. I've been a fan of hers forever, and I sort of didn't let myself look past that, and I was lucky that I didn't have to, but it certainly could have gone another way, and I'm grateful that it didn't, and that she, you know, responded to it in the way that I hoped she would.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. And we are all grateful to that as well. I know when it comes to action films, and I know you're a big fan of them. I'm a big fan of them. One of my favorite things about action films, especially the action films I imagine that you and I both watched when we were growing up, is that action hero list of credentials that's always spoken about in movies. Oh, he was a Green Beret, or he, survived in the jungle by doing this and that and what have you. And
Yeah.
the character of Thelma is as tough as they come. Survivor of the Great Depression, survivor of World War II, double vasectomy, colon cancer, benign brain tumor, all these kind of stuff. Puts all the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers to shame, just so how tough Thelma is compared to the rest of
She's
them.
survived quite a bit, yeah.
So I have a bit, and I think it comes down to, and I talk to my kids about this when it comes to my grandparents as well. It's like, your grandparents have gone through some stuff. They've survived some things, especially pre, all the modern luxuries that we have in our life and all the things that went on. How important was it to you for you to really say, our elders come from a time, and have done things and survived things, and they are much tougher and much more resilient than you think.
Very important. To me, it was just not even necessarily just a product of the time they came from, but a product of having lived a full life, the product of having gone through all these chapters and all these challenges and all these phases of life that, you know, we're all making our way through. My grandma, I like to say, has been old my whole life, but each chapter of that kind of old age has been distinct and has had its own challenges, had its own hurdles, and had its own, you know, traumas and things to overcome. And, you know, she was probably late 60s, 70 or so when I was born, and she's 104 now. And so it's like, yeah, she's been an older person for forever, I guess, in my experience from the time I've been alive, but that's not a monolith. And that in having lived a life and having been around and having had experiences and overcome things and survive things, there is grit and tenacity and knowledge and things that are easy to kind of look past or discount if you're not necessarily in close contact with somebody of that age, or you see them or hear about them through, kind of more distant family relations or on the news or whatever it might be. And I think just having somebody very close to you in your life who has experienced so much of life, inevitably you can see that they've survived a lot. Even just existing that long is surviving a lot, whether or not there was anything, you know, so dramatic in any one moment. So to me, it was important to send up that toughness and that sort of staying power that I've seen in my grandma, who is alive, turns 104 this month, and is just, you know, it's not like it's all been smooth. It's not like she hasn't had to survive things and hit speed bumps, all the rest, but she's soldiered on. And I think to me, that's kind of as tough as it gets. So I wanted to put that feeling and that DNA in the movie.
And yet, when it comes to a lot of people, a lot of elderly people, my parents, your grandmother, maybe your parents as well, when it comes to technology, that's a kryptonite that really kind of cripples a lot of them, because the introduction of all these different devices and different methods and apps and everything else, I struggle sometimes to keep up with this stuff. I mean, it's
A
crazy.
lot.
And I think even I'm like, no more apps, no more of this stuff, let's get back to how it was before. And I know for my parents, I'm trying to help them in the process, for maybe if the last 20 years now, I'm just trying to help them catch up with a lot of this stuff because, they need to pay bills and do things and stuff like that. How much was the introduction of technology in your grandmother's life pivotal to how it also works in the life of Thelma in the movie as well? Because it is at the start of the film a person exploiting that very factor. A lot of elderly people do get scammed. These things do happen in Australia. It's a really big problem here. I'm sure it is in the States as well. And
Yeah.
that, it's we got to cut them a lot of slack because for a very long time they learned one way of how it is to live in the modern world compared to how it is now.
Yeah, the rate of progress is just increasing so rapidly or exponentially that it can be dizzying, I think, for people of that generation and for anybody. I think, I'm sure as we'll continue to experience in our lifetimes. But technology to me always felt like a double-edged sword, and something in the movie that I wanted to treat as such. Because even with my grandma, it's like technology on the one hand can kind of be the bane of her existence with certain things. Even with I guess the scam itself was a little bit more analog, so to speak, in that it was just a phone call. But the 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 presence of it and her frustration with it and the confusion that comes with it is real, but she also has kind of adapted to these different forms of it and used them in ways that I think have also enriched her life. It's been this weird, a double, I guess, for lack of a better expression, a double-edged sword. She's had a phone forever. She does use Instagram. Like, she's looks at pictures of her friends and family.
Mm,
Sometimes she gets lost or confused on there, and things disorient her or freak her out. It's email is something that the relationships technology in the movie were pretty much drawn from what I've watched her experience in her life, which is finding both kind of to her, she thinks of it like this thing that she'll never totally get. And it frustrates her
mm,
because she's always like, and what's this? And what's the internet? And what is it like? And wait, what is any of this? What's a computer? How does any of this work? Sometimes we'll kind of walk our way back to those basic questions, which I'm not always even qualified to answer.
mm,
But I do think in her way, she has also kind of used those things to stay connected with friends that she might have a harder time connecting with. It's I wanted them to have their roses and their thorns, sort of. I think largely they're a challenge, but she definitely is someone for her age who I think engages with that stuff like more than you'd think. And for example, I also like the idea of some of those things being turned on their heads at certain moments in the movie, like the hearing aids, which in real life, my grandma, we've used that feature where you can like set it to the base of the phone and speak directly
yeah.
into the ears. At like a crowded restaurant when she can't hear, sometimes we'll switch to that and talk directly to her, which always kind of felt like a spy like device to me even then. So that felt like a
Mm.
very easy, way to kind of carry that thought a few steps further. But yeah, I think to answer your question in a pretty long-winded way, I think technology for me was something I definitely wanted to ping on as the kind of road bump it can be for people encountering it at a pace that is a little bamboozling, but also find ways to turn that on its head and find, her ability to take ownership of those tools in key moments and kind of maybe be a little more savvy than we'd expect, even if she still is, struggling with them a bit.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. What I love about Thelma of many things is the stakes in the movie. And for me, when it comes down to watch films, I don't care if it's the Taking the Pelham 1, 2, 3 or Dumb and Dumber. Okay, what are the stakes in the movie? What's this journey we're going through with the characters? What are they doing? What they doing for? And what I love about Thelma is that the stakes, it doesn't have to be the end of the world, big, super villain guy taking over the world. It can be these small things sometimes, the small grounded things can be the biggest things in the world. And you find that you feel that here in the movie. The smallest things that happen to Thelma can have the largest of consequences, and that's what's really great about that. Can you talk to me about stakes in your writing? How important was it to establish stakes in the film to make sure that when we go on this journey with Thelma throughout Los Angeles to find this scammer, that we invested in the character and also, invested in her. I don't want to say survival, but her well-being throughout the film as we're watching this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that because it's, to me, the stakes were key because the movie can so easily tip way too broad and way too silly and referential and parody, and you kind of lose the real stakes of the mission. And it can also, in dealing with something like elder abuse or fraud and all that, it can also tip very heavy and sort of depressing. And I think the tone for me was so important to try to thread the needle so that we could leave room for the comedy, for the excitement, for the fun, but always let it be driven by character and driven by her kind of unflinching desire to reclaim what was taken from her, both on like a thematic level in terms of just proving to people that she can still do it, that she still got it, but also on a tangible level of her trying to get this thing back that was taken. So I think, to me, it was always important to treat the stakes with a lot of sincerity, even when the movie kind of escalates into slightly more genre territory and we're kind of, getting into our true lo-fi action movie that we're trying to build to step by step. I think for me, it was always just about treating those things with sincerity and making sure we understood why she's doing what she's doing. Because I agree with you. I think kind of the whole operating principle for the movie was little things are big things, like if we can zero into the little things that as we get a little more fallible and frail and face our mortality or humanity or whatever you want to call it, these little things can totally set us off course, totally shake us from our sense of self or put us in actual danger. And so for me, both on a emotional level for her and also just a physical level with the action and the stakes, it was so important to me to just make sure we paid close attention and a lot of care to how we started the movie, which was ideally as grounded and human as possible, so that we started from a place that each incremental step toward genre and toward action and toward, her making moves translated as something with real stakes. Because I think if you start too big, you kind of have nowhere to go in this movie because it needs to stay local, so to speak. It needs to stay human. It needs to stay kind of everyday. So the stakes were always very important. And to me, it was always about just treating them sincerely and not kind of never cutting wide and revealing like, oh, look, it's actually just this little step, like being with her on these journeys, staying in her subjective experience as much as possible to bring us into that and let there be humor and tension there, but not to comment on it so top down, if that makes sense.
It does, very much so. Final question. Has your grandmother seen the film? Did she get a chance to watch it and kind of like, understand what's going on with it, enjoy it? I'm really curious about what her reaction was to Thelma.
She has gotten the chance to see it, which I'm very grateful for. And she really loves it. She's I think very touched by it and finally has sort of been able. I think it's also surreal and kind of a lot for her to take in. It's her real name, it's her real condo that we shot in. There's a lot of life imitating art, imitating life, etc. So I think there's a little bit of like a this is nuts factor for her, that this is just kind of out in the world. But she also is I think was finally also able to take it in as the ode to her that it's meant to be and was touched by that. So I'm really grateful that she's been able to see it and understand it and kind of feel it for what it's supposed to be. But yeah, I think she's both very, very proud and excited. And also it's all a little strange for her. Her life has definitely gotten smaller in these past few years. As she's doing all right, all things considered, but at 103, 104, things get a little tougher. And I think there's something strange about her being in the world kind of less than ever, while this thing kind of born of her is out there. So I think that part of it is surreal and kind of strange for her to wrap her head around, but she's been really excited and she's following along with everything. And it's been fun. It's been really fun. And I feel really lucky to have her around for this moment. So it's been good.
Well, we are very lucky as well to be able to see Thelma. It's one of the best films of 2024. And for everyone out there listening, July 19 on digital and video on demand, Thelma, watch it, embrace it, enjoy it. Hopefully at the end of the year, I don't know if it's going to be like a re-release for some type of awards push to maybe get June out there, some acknowledgement from the awards bodies, and for your work as well as a writer and director. It'd be fantastic if that would happen, because I think this is a beautiful film. It's a beautiful film and a thrilling film, and a film, like I said before, it's all you buy in from the moment of go, and you don't stop until those end credits come up. And I just absolutely love the film and I adore it. And yeah, Josh, I just want to say thank you so much for your film, and you know, and all the hard work you've done. And say hello to your grandmother as well, and give her our best as well. God bless
I
her,
will.
and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Really pleasure talking to you, and I will absolutely pass that along to her.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.